They want you to picture the addict as a stereotype, some skeletal figure in an alley, a junkie with a needle, a burnt-out husk shaking in withdrawal, someone other, someone less than. That picture is useful to them, because it convinces you that you are not addicted, that the chains you wear are jewelry, that your habits are a lifestyle, not bondage. But addiction in the modern West is not confined to back alleys. It sits in the boardroom. It strolls through Whole Foods. It has its own holiday gift baskets and pastel Instagram accounts. The addiction no longer hides. It has been mainstreamed to normalize, baptize this culture. The addictions are everywhere. They are your morning routine, your night ritual, the joke you post about how you can't function without coffee. They are your late night scrolling, your snack treats, your gummies, your dopamine drip reels. The irony of this age is that the more addicted a society becomes, the less it is willing to admit addiction exists at all, because it's not heroin, it's Starbucks. It's not crack, it's TikTok. It's not meth, it's Netflix. This is why the modern malaise feels so unshakable, because the malaise isn't incidental. It isn't some vague, mysterious epidemic. It is addiction itself, the structuring principle of life in 21st century consumer society. The laundromat of addiction, old addictions, were dirty, obvious, stigmatized. Cigarettes yellowed your teeth. Liquor stank on your breath. Opiates left you nodding off in public. The social penalty was clear, but now, addiction has been laundered, sanitized, packaged in aesthetic branding. Coffee is not a dependency. It's a ritual. Sugar is not a compulsion. It's a treat. Porn is not enslavement. It's liberation. Weed is not sedation. It's wellness. TikTok is not a dopamine trap. It's connection. This is the genius of modern marketing. Don't fight addiction. Normalize it. Don't warn against dependency. Romanticize it. Take the chains and rebrand them as self-expression. The 20th century AD man sold you cigarettes with a cowboy. The 21st century platform sells you addiction with a lifestyle influencer. Same playbook, prettier packaging. With a dopamine marketplace, we are not living in an economy of goods. We are living in an economy of neurotransmitters. Every product, every platform, every service is calibrated around the same commodity, your dopamine. That chemical surge of want, need, almost, yes. And the best way to guarantee supply is not to deliver abundance, but to deliver scarce, winter, unpredictable, addictive reward. Caffeine keeps you hooked because without it, you collapse. Sugar keeps you hooked because every cell screams for more insulin spikes. Porn keeps you hooked because the novelty is infinite. TikTok keeps you hooked because the next swipe might be boring, or it might be electric. The uncertainty is the glue. This is not entertainment, this is entrapment, and the wealthy know it. They always have. That's why they don't consume like you do. They sip espresso, not 3 cans of Monster. They scroll through quarterly reports, not infinite reels. They manage vices with discipline, or outsource the indulgence entirely. The sovereign don't drown in the dopamine marketplace. They sell in it. Addiction is governance. This is where the anarcho-capitalist truth lands hardest. Addiction is not just a business model. It is a political model. It is governance by chemical leash. Rome had bread and circuses. Britain had gin and empire. America perfected a softer tyranny. Keep the citizens addicted, and you never need to rule them with force. A man sedated by caffeine, sugar, porn, an infinite scroll will not revolt. He will not build, he will not rebel. He will beg for more sedation and call it freedom. Addiction is the invisible tax, the invisible leash. The perfect form of control because it requires no enforcement. You choose it, you defend it, you meme it, you cling to it. And that is why the modern addict never sees himself as one. He doesn't just love his chains, he identifies with them. The wealthy perspective step back and look from above. Imagine the vantage point of the high status, the wealthy, the sovereign. You see a society of citizens pacified not by police, not by armies, but by their own compulsion. A population so dependent on stimulation that they'll surrender freedom before they surrender their sugar, their porn, their TikTokia. The sovereign profit from this. You build the companies, you buy the stocks, you license the platforms. The addicts are the customers, the users, the livestock. Their malaise is your balance sheet. Their anxiety is your recurring revenue. And this is why high-status men do not panic over the culture war. The masses fight over pronouns while mainlining Starbucks and Instagram. They argue about politics while their reward systems are farmed like cash crops. They have already been neutralized. They cannot win because they cannot focus. Setting the stage, so we begin here. Addiction is not marginal. Addiction is central. Addiction is not shameful. Addiction is disguised. The junkie in the alley is not the face of modern dependency. The new junkie is the middle manager with 3 lattes a day. The teenager melting his brain on TikTok. The influencer pretending she's empowered while selling you her dopamine spiral. And the irony is this. The more normalized it becomes, the harder it is to escape. Because the culture no longer even admits there's a problem. It calls it self-care. It calls it empowerment. It calls it normal life. But here's the truth. Addiction is governance. Addiction is profit. Addiction is the modern leash. And the only question worth asking is this: will you be the addict or the sovereign? The first trick of modern addiction is camouflage. If you can normalize the substance, you can neutralize the stigma. If you can frame dependency as lifestyle, you can sell it without limit. These are not fringe vices. They are central pillars of society. The average man is not nodding off in an opium den. He is standing in line at Starbucks. He is reaching for a soda. He is opening Pornhub. He is scrolling TikTok. He is hitting a vape between bong rips. Let's peel back each mask. Coffee. The productivity drug. Caffeine is the most successful drug in human history. Period. Entire economies run on it. The so-called morning ritual is less about productivity and more about dependency. Remove caffeine from the bloodstream of the West and watch the GDP collapse in real time. But notice how caffeine has been packaged. It isn't called a drug. It's called energy. It's not a chemical. It's a culture. Coffee houses are positioned as intellectual hubs, networking hubs, hipster hangouts. Starbucks sells you not just a latte but a sense of belonging. Historically, the same thing happened with tobacco. Cigarettes were once taboo, associated with sailors, prostitutes, criminals. Then Edward Bernays and Madison Avenue dressed them up as sophistication, as rebellion, as glamour. Dependency became identity. Coffee's the same con. The withdrawal headache is proof. You're not choosing a latte. You're avoiding a crash. You are not free. You are managed. Sugar, the silent drug. If caffeine is the day's ignition, sugar is the fuel line that keeps the crash delayed. It is not a food. It is a chemical. Sugar is the most common addiction in America because it is invisible. It's baked into bread, hidden in condiments, disguised in healthy yogurt. It doesn't come with the warning label of nicotine or alcohol. It comes with cartoon mascots. Historically, sugar was rare, once reserved for kings and aristocrats. Entire empires, Britain foremost, were built on sugar plantations, slavery, and blood. The empire collapsed, but the substance stayed. What was once a luxury of the elite became the staple of the masses. And now the masses are obese, diabetic, insulin-resistant, metabolically deranged. A generation hooked from childhood, raised on breakfast cereals that are closer to candy than sustenance. Sugar is the perfect modern leash. It pacifies, it rewards, it punishes when withdrawn, and it's protected by trillion-dollar industries. Porn. The digital leash. Porn is the most corrosive addiction of all because it hijacks the core driver of civilization, sexual energy. Historically, men built empires, fought wars, and composed symphonies to impress women. Desire, frustration, longing, these were engines of achievement. Today, the same impulse is drained nightly into glowing screens. The empire collapses not from foreign invaders, but from wasted seed. Porn is marketed as liberation. The 20th century's sexual revolution reframed restraint as repression and indulgence as progress. Now the liberated man is alone in his apartment, clicking through infinite tabs, overstimulated and The damage is not just moral, it is neurological. Novelty rewires the brain. Real women cannot compete with an endless menu of extremes. Young men lose the ability to pursue real intimacy, real family, real legacy. They trade sovereignty for sedation. And here, the brutal truth. The men most addicted to porn are the ones most needed to rebuild a collapsing West. Instead, they are neutralized, pacified, harvested for ad revenue. Weed. The slow sedation weed has been laundered from stoner, loser, to wellness product. It's not drugs, it's medicine. It's not escapism, it's relaxation. The industry doesn't sell joints. It sells artisanal gummies in pastel jars, wrapped in the branding of boutique wellness. But the effect is the same. Sedation, paranoia, apathy. The ambition leaks out of a man with every hit. The urgency drains. The drive dissolves. Contrast this with alcohol, which for centuries was both vice and ritual, fuel for rebellion, even revolution. The tavern was a breeding ground for politics. Weed is the opposite. It produces no revolutions, only munchies, giggles, and paranoia. A society high in weed is a society incapable of action. That is why legalization was inevitable. A sedated population is an obedient population, and the tax revenue flows to the state while the energy of a generation dissolves into smoke. TikTok, the infinite slot machine finally. The crown jewel of digital addiction. TikTok, the algorithm perfected. The casino in your pocket. The Skinner box wrapped in neon filters. Every swipe is a lever pull. The uncertainty is the addiction. Will it be funny? Outrageous? Sexy? Disgusting? Boring? The unpredictability keeps you hooked longer than any substance. Historically, Rome had circuses, bread, and entertainment to keep the masses docile. The empire collapsed, but the playbook survived. TikTok is the circus, digitized endless distraction, endless spectacle. endless pacification. And the genius of TikTok is that it doesn't just sedate, it shapes, it engineers, tastes, politics, values. It is not just a feed, it is a propaganda pipeline. The Chinese Communist Party doesn't even need to invade, they only need to control the algorithm that dictates what American teenagers think about themselves. The thread that binds them: coffee, sugar, porn, weed, TikTok, different forms, same structure, all engineered to hijack dopamine, all normalized as lifestyle, all disguised as culture. The addict no longer looks like a junkie. The addict looks like the average man in the West, the worker with his morning coffee, the teenager on TikTok, the 30-year-old hitting a vape between bong rips and scrolling porn tabs. This is not freedom. This is containment. A civilization built not on virtue, discipline, or sovereignty, but on perpetual sedation. And the wealthy smile, because they own the platforms, the companies, the supply chains. The masses consume. The elites profit. The addiction is disguised, but the control is obvious. The addiction isn't just tolerated in the modern economy. It's worshipped. It's studied. It's engineered. It's the crown jewel of capitalism, the engine that keeps consumer society humming at 120 hertz. Why? Because addiction is the most reliable business model ever discovered. Recurring revenue in business. Nothing is more valuable than recurring revenue. Selling a product once is good. Selling it forever is empire. Addiction guarantees return customers. You don't have to pitch someone on coffee every morning. They crave it before they open their eyes. You don't need to remarket porn, the brain does the marketing. You don't need to convince a teenager to scroll TikTok, they can't not. Old world capitalists fought for brand loyalty. New world capitalists simply build dependency. Brand loyalty fades. Chemical hooks do not. That's why the valuation of social media companies looks insane on paper. Billions in market cap with no real product. Wrong. The product is the recurring revenue of human compulsion. Every thumb flick, every notification click, every dopamine jolt is a microtransaction, even if no money changes hands, because your time is the currency, your attention is the payment. Low resistance addiction is the only business model that requires no persuasion, no billboard, no influencer, no coupon. The craving itself is the sales funnel. Contrast that with traditional commerce. A company selling a car has two battle competitors. A restaurant has two outmarket rivals. But the caffeine dealer, the porn platform, the algorithm, they don't compete, they compel. The resistance is not external, it's internal. And the addict is the perfect customer because he fights himself on behalf of the company. He bargains with himself, defends his own leash, rationalizes his own spending. A non-addicted customer has to be persuaded. An addicted customer persuades himself. Social camouflage, what makes the modern addictions genius, is not just their compulsive pullets, their disguise. Old addictions carried stigma. A drunk was mocked. A junkie was feared. A gambler was pitied. Shame was the natural counterweight. Now addiction has been reframed as culture. Coffee is a meme. Sugar is comfort. Weed is wellness. Porn is liberation. TikTok is community. The camouflage neutralizes shame. People will defend their addictions harder than they defend their freedoms. Try taking coffee out of an office and watch the mutiny. Try banning TikTok and watch the riots. The population won't fight for sovereignty, but they'll fight to the death for their dopamine leash. And that's the genius. The stigma is gone. The shame is gone. Addiction has become identity, which makes it unassailable. Scalability, here's why. Governments and corporations alike adore addiction. It scales better than anything else. Drugs like heroin, crack, meth, they're powerful, but they burn people out too fast. Dead customers don't spend. Sick customers become liabilities. But sugar? It kills slowly. Coffee? Harmless enough to disguise dependency? Porn? Infinite supply? Zero overdose risk? TikTok? Endlessly renewable content at zero marginal cost. Weed sedates without killing. These addictions don't destroy instantly. They erode gradually, which makes them perfect. You don't lose the customer, you degrade him just enough to keep him alive, obedient, and paying. It's the same logic the British Empire used with gin in the 18th century. Gin wasn't just a drink, it was social control. Keep the poor sedated, drunk, pacified, while industry thrived. Today's sugar and scroll economy is the digital gin craze. Cheap, ubiquitous, numbing, and perfectly scalable. Addiction as asset class. If you look closely, you'll see that entire industries now function as asset classes of addiction. Caffeine chains like Starbucks are effectively daily subscription services, masquerading as cafes. Sugar conglomerates like Coca-Cola sell not beverages but biochemical hooks with 99% brand recognition. Porn platforms operate as near monopolies, with user bases bigger than most religions. Social media giants like Meta and ByteDance are trillion-dollar dopamine brokers. Cannabis corporations package sedation as wellness and sell it back to you with a tax receipt. The addict is not just a customer. He is the collateral. His future labor, his future attention, his future energy are securitized and traded. Wall Street doesn't just profit from your addiction. Depends on an end state. The state loves it because an addicted population doesn't revolt. It tweets, it complains, it self-medicates, it scrolls, but it does not organize. Why the elites don't play? Here's the tell. If addiction were harmless, the elites would indulge, but they don't, not the way you do. They sip measured espresso, not venti caramel monstrosities. They hire assistants to monitor feeds instead of drowning in TikTok. They consume porn less, but own the servers. They treat weed like a hedge fund investment, not a personal identity. For the wealthy, addiction is not a lifestyle. It's an asset. It's a commodity. They don't get high, they get paid. And that's the brutal divide. The poor consume addictions. The rich monetize addictions. This is why addiction has become the perfect business model. It guarantees recurring revenue. It requires no persuasion. It wears cultural camouflage. It scales without killing the host too fast. It enriches the elite while pacifying the masses. Addiction is not a glitch of capitalism. Addiction is the refinement of capitalism, the most elegant, profitable, and insidious version yet. And the addict mocking the junkie in the alley while clutching his phone and his latte never sees that. Yes, just another user, another customer, another livestock unit in a trillion-dollar dopamine farm. Every civilization writes its own obituary long before it collapses. Rome carved its decline in marble amphitheaters. Britain wrote it in the ledgers of opium traders. America etches it into the blue light of smartphones, the pastel branding of gummies, the neon glow of algorithmic feeds. The story is the same every time. A people builds, expands, dominates. Then, as wealth accumulates and struggle fades, the rulers discover a trick. Sedation is cheaper than discipline. Pacification is easier than virtue. And so the citizens are bought off, not with freedom, not with greatness, but with bread, with gin, with scroll. History doesn't just repeat, it rhymes in narcotics. Rome, bread and circuses consider Rome, the greatest empire of its age. Its legions stretched across continents. Its aqueducts carried water farther than any civilization had dreamed. Its culture absorbed and reshaped the Mediterranean world. And yet what is the most famous legacy of Rome's decline? Bread and circuses, free grain to pacify the masses. Endless gladiatorial games to distract them. The citizens were not building, not defending, not striving, they were watching. Watching blood sport, watching spectacle, watching as their sovereignty dissolved. Addiction, disguised as entertainment, softened Rome until invaders simply walked across its corpse. The circus was not harmless distraction, it was the architecture of collapse. Britain. Sugar and opium, then Britain. Master of oceans, empire upon which the sun never set. How did it fuel its dominance? With sugar? With opium? The British diet was built on sugar plantations run by slaves. Their coffers were filled by flooding China with opium. And as the empire spread, so did dependency. Gin-soaked slums in London, tea and sugar rituals that left workers metabolically enslaved. Whole continents destabilized by narcotics. Addiction was not Britain's accident, it was Britain's engine. But like all engines, it consumed more than it produced. And in time, the empire rotted from within. A people sedated cannot rule the world forever. America. The digital den now, we arrive at America, heir to both Rome's spectacle and Britain's commerce. But instead of amphitheaters or opium dens, America has built a digital narcotic that fits in the palm of your hand. TikTok is the modern circus. Porn is the modern opium. Sugar is the modern gin. Coffee is the modern tobacco. Weed is the modern laudanum. All cheaper, cleaner, and infinitely more scalable. America exports addiction as its greatest cultural product. Fast food chains instead of spice routes. Porn servers instead of slave ships. Streaming platforms instead of empires. And the citizens, once pioneers, once inventors, once builders now scroll, snack, and sedate themselves into oblivion. The addiction is not fringe, it is not accidental. It is the heart of American decline. The prophetic warning civilizations do not always collapse in fire and invasion. Sometimes they collapse in silence. Sometimes they collapse in laughter. Sometimes they collapse in a haze of dopamine, too numbed to realize the barbarians are already inside the gates. The addict does not rise up. The addict does not rebel. The addict does not build. He consumes. He confesses his weakness in tweets, memes, and jokes. He laughs about his leash while tightening it around his own throat. And that is why America may not fall to China, or Russia, or war. It may fall to TikTok, to sugar, to sedation, to an entire people too anxious to focus, to pacify, to organize, too addicted to even want freedom. This is the prophecy. Rome was undone by circuses, Britain by opium, America by dopamine. The elite already know you think the rulers are blind. They're not. They know. They understand addiction is control. That's why they don't drown in it. They don't spend 6 hours on TikTok. They own the platform. They don't live on sugar. They own the conglomerates. They don't smoke weed nightly. They hold shares in cannabis corporations. They don't binge porn. They control the servers that deliver it. The elite administer addiction like a governor administers taxes. They don't indulge, they harvest. They don't drown, they trade. They don't spiral, they profit. And this is why history repeats. The masses fall into sedation. The rulers profit from sedation, and the civilization collapses because sedation rots the will to survive. Collapse is not coming gets here. Do not imagine collapse as some distant apocalypse. It is not Mad Max. It is not nuclear winter. Collapse is the gradual, silent erosion of will. Collapse is when a people can no longer build cathedrals, raise families, or defend borders. Collapse is when addiction replaces virtue as the common glue. Look around. The collapse is not coming. It is here. When 40% of citizens are obese, collapse is here. When young men watch more porn than pursue women, collapse is here. When TikTok dictates the attention span of a generation, collapse is here. When the ruling class openly sells sedation while mocking discipline, collapse is here. This is not theory. This is diagnosis. History is merciless. Civilizations that choose sedation over struggle do not last. Rome dissolved into Britain drowned in opium. America is dissolving in dopamine. The addicts always think they are free. They laugh at their habits. They meme their chains. They mock the junkie while clutching their phone, their vape, their frappuccino. They don't realize the joke is on them. And one day, centuries from now, historians will look back and ask, how did the most powerful nation in history collapse without a shot fired? The answer will be simple. They were conquered not by armies, but by their appetites. They fell not to invaders, but to addiction, in disguise. The addict thinks he is living, but he is merely consuming time, until time consumes him. He scrolls, he gulps coffee. He chains dopamine hits back to back until the day is over. He laughs at memes about his own compulsions. He shrugs when reminded of his dependency. He tells himself it's fine. Everyone does it. That is exactly the point. Everyone does it. And that is why civilizations fall. The sovereign man, there will always be exceptions. There will always be a thin sliver of men who refuse the leash. The sovereign man sees the game for what it is. He sees the slot machine in his hand, the chemical drip in his cup, the pacifier disguised as porn, the sedation sold as weed, the circus disguised as TikTok, and he steps away. Not because he is a saint, but because he is ruthless. Because he knows that the man who can't control his appetites will be controlled by them. And once you're controlled by your appetites, you're controlled by whoever supplies them. The sovereign man builds citadels, dynasties, legacies. He refuses to sell his time to the feed. He refuses to lease his soul to algorithms. He chooses to be the seller, not the consumer, the ruler, not the addict. But he is rare, and his rarity is why collapse cannot be stopped. The addicted masses. Because the truth is this: the masses do not want sovereignty. They want sedation. They beg for it. They defend it. They would rather be pacified than free, numbed than disciplined, distracted than awake. Take away their TikTok, and they riot. Take away their sugar, and they howl. Take away their weed, and they crumble. The addict will fight harder for his vices than for his liberty, and so liberty dies, while the vices remain. The addict is not a rebel. He is livestock, a creature who thinks himself free because the pasture is wide. He grazes on dopamine, milked daily, until he is too weak to even imagine escape. And when the collapse comes, when the walls crack, when the world burns, he will not fight. He will scroll until the lights go out. Addiction is fate. Addiction is not just a business model. It has become destiny, the architecture of decline, the great filter through which civilizations pass before they disintegrate. Rome could not survive the circus. Britain could not survive opium. America will not survive dopamine. This is not speculation. This is inevitability. A people who cannot master their own impulses cannot master history. A nation that trades sovereignty for sedation will not outlast nations that still prize discipline, family, sacrifice. And here's the cruel twist. The sovereigns who do survive the few will not rebuild the old empire. They will build citadels of their own, walled gardens of discipline and hierarchy, separate from the masses who chose sedation. The world will fragment, sovereign enclaves in addicted wastelands. That is the future. Not unity, not triumph. Fragmentation, collapse, division between rulers and addicts, sovereigns and livestock. The final warning: understand this. Collapse will not be loud. It will not look like the movies. There will be no climactic battle, no glorious last stand. Collapse will be quiet, pathetic, invisible. It will look like a man refreshing his feed as his savings vanish in inflation. It will look like a woman numbing herself with wine and Netflix as her family dissolves. It will look like teenagers scrolling TikTok while the borders erode, while enemies advance, while opportunities vanish. Collapse will not come with fire, it will come with silence, with sedation, with addiction in disguise. And when historians of the future write about it, they will not marvel at how powerful America once was. They will marvel at how willingly it surrendered everything to the slot machine of dopamine. Closing words, addiction has always been a chain, but never before has it been so invisible, so normalized, so worshipped. And now the question is not whether the masses are addicted. The question is only how far the addiction will drag them down before the collapse is complete. Because here's the final truth. Civilizations do not rise on addiction, they fall on it. Addicts do not inherit the earth, they are buried in it. And the sovereign man, standing apart, will not save them. He will watch from his citadel as the addicted world crumbles. The addict laughs at the junkie in the alley, never realizing he is the same. The addict jokes about needing coffee, sugar, porn, weed, scroll, never realizing those jokes are the obituary of his civilization. The addict mistakes sedation for freedom, never realizing he has already surrendered. The sovereign sees the truth, the addict never will. And that is why the addict's future is collapsed. This has been Addiction in Disguise. Not a sermon, not a manifesto, a warning. Heed it or laugh at it. Either way, the end will be the same.